Hey guys! Sorry this video took so long to upload, but at least now we're done with school. Hope you guys are having a great summer and welcome back to a video about cells. What are cells exactly? Cells are considered the building blocks of life by many scientists. We're all made up of trillions of cells, and they make up our fingers, our eyes, even our nails. However, while cells make up us, atoms make up cells. There's around 100 trillion atoms in the average human cell and 30 trillion cells in the average human body. That is crazy to think about. Quick challenge. If you're a math whiz, try to figure out how much atoms are in our bodies. There's also different types of cells, and each one has a task that it must perform. In the human body, stem cells, which is this type of cell that can become other type of cells. It's kind of a simplified way to explain it, but basically, stem cells can become muscle cells, fat cells, bone cells, nerve cells, immune cells, you name it. There are over 200 different types of cells in our bodies, and there are so many more organisms out there with different functions needed for their cells. However, animal cells are usually very different from bacteria or plant cells because they have different parts that can help them perform those tasks that are only unique to animals. An example of this is when plants use a process called photosynthesis to get energy, but animals don't. So plant cells have parts that can do this while animal cells do not. What is the cell theory? Throughout history, scientists began to learn more and more about cells. They developed a scientific theory, which is an explanation of a natural incident or occurrence, and is supported by evidence and is tested many times to make sure that it's right. They call this the cell theory. So what is it about? This theory says that cells are the smallest living unit of life. And you know that atoms are smaller, but they aren't living, breathing, functioning organisms or parts of an organism. In addition, all living things are made up of one or more cell, and each cell comes from already existing cells. This happens through processes like cell division, which is this really complicated act that cells go through where one old cell divides into two new cells. We can talk about this in a later video if you guys want to learn more. What is the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms? You've probably heard these words somewhere, but we're going to give you a little rundown on what they're about. You know that all living beings are made up of one or more cells, but they're given specific names. Organisms that only have one cell are unicellular, like bacteria in your stomach or amoeba, which is this really cool looking organism. Multicellular organisms, however, have many cells, like humans or cows. Try to guess which one of the diagrams is multicellular and which one is unicellular. Okay, so the top diagram is multicellular, and you can see that because there's different ovals that are kind of connected, and those represent different cells. The bottom is unicellular, and you can see that because there's just one glob, one little cell glob. I don't know what to call it. But remember that cells in real life, they aren't perfect circles like you can see in many diagrams. Cells are actually like oval shaped, or they could be wonky like the second diagram. Cells contain these things called organelles. When I talked about parts of a cell, I was really talking about organelles because organelles are considered the organs of a cell, kind of. So a heart or a brain in a human body is kind of like a heart or a brain in a cell, but these are called organelles. And there are many types of organelles, and each one has a purpose. All of them have an important function, but some of the ones you'll need to know today are the nucleus, cell membrane, and cytoplasm. We're going to talk about these in the next 3 slides, so it's good to keep in mind. The nucleus is considered the brain of the cell and holds genetic material. Genetic material is like DNA or RNA, and it's passed down from cell to cell. It also controls what the cell does. The cell membrane is like the border of a country just around a cell. It chooses what can go in and what can go out and what's not even allowed to. The cytoplasm is the material or substance that is in a cell that takes up all the empty space between all the organelles. This is kind of considered a jelly-like substance, but no one really knows what it's like because it's so tiny we can't really see cells. Okay, so cells are split into two different groups, which are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We'll focus on prokaryotes in this slide, but basically prokaryotes consist of two of 6 kingdoms, bacteria and archaea, which are both unicellular. You'll see that these prokaryotes and eukaryotes are kind of correlating with unicellular and multicellular, so it's great to keep that in mind too. This means that they only have one cell. They also have DNA that floats around in the cytoplasm because prokaryotes don't have a nucleus. Eukaryotes, however, consist of 4 of the 6 kingdoms: animals, plants, fungi, and protists. These are mostly multicellular, except I'm pretty sure there's some protists that are unicellular, but we can look it up. Their DNA lies in the nucleus, which unlike prokaryotes, they do have. They also have tons of other organelles. Prokaryotes don't tend to have as much organelles, and we can talk about these specific ones later. Scientists have made models for how cells look throughout the years. So here's some examples. Remember, as I said, that cells aren't specific, like rigid structures. They aren't like ovals or circles. They aren't perfect ovals. So they're actually really wonky. So these diagrams aren't the perfect, representation of them. But you can really learn a lot from them because they have organelles and they have structures, and it's just really cool to look at. You can see that there's a lot that we haven't talked about yet, but we will in future videos. This was only a quick overview with a couple of interesting facts and terms in there, but we'll get more into depth later. Thanks so much for watching again, and have a great summer!